subject, muy bien. Verb, monotransitive. What? The farm. Bien, ojo acá, ¿eh? The storm buried people. See? And then this, in the ruins of their own homes, is another element.
Yes, it's a prepositional phrase as an adverb.
Adverbial.
Adverbial. I was confusing about that because I think of it as a post modifier, but no.
Aha, but do you think that in the ruins of their homes is post-modifying people or is telling you where they were buried?
Now it's telling where.
Claro, you should bear in mind that, see? If it's a prepositional phrase post-modifying the noun, see, then it precisely post-modifies the noun, but if it's an adverbial, semantically speaking, it should denote time, place, see? So this is prepositional phrase, and the function is adverbial. A ver, since first flight, rescue, muy bien, have been moving through the countryside, bien, because they were looking perfecto. Subordinate finite, muy bien, bárbaro. Number 3. Rescuers don't know what. Bien, subordinate, finite, nominal clause as direct object, complex, muy bien. Ojo acá, Miren. What is it that rescuers don't know? What they will find. When, as they rescue, as they search through the debris. So these are two different clauses. Sería así. Y esto is another subordinate finite adverbial clause, and the function is adverbial. Ojo ahí. Bien. 30 people have died and many more. Acá faltó. Many more is
I wasn't sure.
Noun phrase.
No, pero sí, noun phrase as
A subject.
tal cual. Are, perfecto. No, ojo acá, Bien, did you check missing as the adjective? Sí, está bien. Perfecto.
Yeah, I looked it, but I wasn't sure anyway.
No, it's okay. Many more are missing. What about number 5? Did you do it? Who did it?
I didn't do this one.
A ver.
I did it, but as I have written the previous ones, I didn't want to write everything.
Okay, don't worry, do it. A ver,
with this one, I put I as a noun phrase, a subject, will go as a verb phrase, and I didn't know what crazy was. What
type of word is crazy?
Adjective, right?
See, an adjective. So, if it's an adjective, what type of verb?
Copula.
Copular, tal cual. And what's the function of crazy, the adjective?
A compliment.
Exacto, ¿sí? Can you write it there? I think it's...
Yeah.
¿Ludmila o Aldana?
No, it was Aldana.
Dale, Aldana.
Let me try to do it here. So we said...
And what about the if clause?
I wrote that it was a subordinate finite if clause.
Tal cual, muy bien, eso sería un adverbial clause. Subordinate finite, adverbial clause.
Thank you for the help, Peter. I am like an old lady with...
Yeah, no problem.
Perfecto, muy bien. What type of sentence is it?
Complex.
Tal cual. Bien, continuamos con el 2. A ver. Need to do not pronouns, myself. Specific, central. Acá, ¿eh? Remember that personal, possessive, personal pronouns are, specific, perdón, are central. With emphatic use. A ver cómo estaba en el uso. I myself. Perfecto, muy bien. Independent, ¿no? Porque es emphatic use. Ojo acá, la función en todo caso es emphatic use. Sí, o sea, la función. A ver, ¿dónde estaba? You repair.
Yes, I was a little confused about where to put the function there.
Claro, when it's emphatic, the emphatic use, the function is emphatic. ¿Sí? Emphatic use, because the object is the flat tire. Entonces, esto acá iría. Ahí está, emphatic use. Features, individual, anime. Ojo acá, ¿esto lo sacaron de nouns?
Yes, I was confused. Should I put only personal?
Claro, personal or
Ah, okay,
non-personal.
okay.
See? And remember that, for example, in the case of he or she, you have to say if it's male or female.
Yes, I have a doubt as regard to the function of the pronouns. If they acquire literally the function that they have within the sentence. For example, in this case, myself vendría a ser como subjective porque está dentro de lo que
Sí,
sea sujeto, ¿o no?
sí, pero ¿sabes lo que pasa? Como acá está como emphatic use, o sea, ahí porque justo lo pusiste delante, pero cuando era emphatic use puede estar al final, I repaired the flat tire myself, ¿sí? Entonces ahí está como objective. Entonces ahí sí, creo que no pusieron nada, en case, está bien.
Ok.
Porque esto del case aplica para cuando tiene es o subjective, objective o genitive. Bien, first person, singular. Perfecto, muy bien. The person whom you met. ¿Por qué acá hay un zero?
Porque había en el key, también estaba marcado, pero
Ah, pero para déjame ver
yo no
porque
le sé whom.
No, yo tampoco entendí por qué estaba.
No, ni iría este zero, perdón. Acá sé que hay
Me
un
pareció
error
raro,
ahí.
pero bueno.
Sí, lo voy a eliminar, ¿sí? Porque no va. The person whom you met. Ahí está. Restricted, pero perfecto. Pero antes de eso, recuerden que era specific.
Right.
Yo les di la división en el mind map de specific y non-specific, ¿o no?
Sí.
Ah, bien, entonces acá sería specific. Restrictive. No, mira, restrictive es la relative clause. O sea, sí, la clause, o sea, relative pronoun introduces a relative clause. The relative clause can be restrictive or non-restrictive, but that is the relative clause. In grammar one, we focus on the pronoun, and the pronoun is specific relative pronoun. That's it.
Okay, I went too far, basically.
No, but it's okay, claro.
It will
Bien.
be non-restrictive because also we can take it out. I mean, we can omit it, right?
No, en este caso es
No,
restricted
it's
because you
restricted.
need
Yeah.
It's
to
restricted.
specify who this person is.
Okay.
Because of the noun itself, the antecedent.
The
Sí, o
thing
sea,
is
it's
that
not
we do not
person.
specify because we are not talking about the clause. We are talking about the introductory element of the clause. That's what you are referring to.
Oh, you mean you could take out whom you met and just leave the person was a Michael?
No,
That's what you
no,
mean?
no.
No,
O sea,
I
you need
meant
to use. Sí.
we have two kind of clauses, defining and non-defining. But we are not putting that because it's the pronoun, not the clause, what we are analyzing.
Claro, tal cual.
So,
¿Parece?
yeah, because en mi resumen también lo había puesto. Entonces, cuando tenemos alguno de estos, no hace falta que pongamos qué tipo de clause es la.
Claro, no. No, no, no. A ver, si lo sabés y lo querés poner, perfecto, pero eso es algo de gramática 2.
Perfecto.
El tipo de clause, si es restrictive o non-restrictive. Y creo que alguien preguntó si era la clause restrictive o non-restrictive. ¿Puede ser? Está bien, es restrictive. Porque vos acá sí o sí necesitas especificar qué persona, porque por el noun, ¿sí? Pero volvemos a lo mismo. Esto de restrictive, no restrictive es grammar 2. A ver, few possessions and little hope. A ver.
Is everything else okay? On whom?
Sí. A ver, sí. We have few possessions and little hope. Muy bien. Es objective y gender personal, sí. A ver, non-specific, indefinite, quantitative, quantifiers, o bueno, está bien, quantitative pronoun, determiner, plus common countable noun, positions, muy bien. Mira, acá para usar términos más, más, más técnicos, vocal meaning.
Ah, okay. Yes.
¿Se acuerdan que lo vimos el otro día?
Yes. Yes.
Few, small number or small amount, ¿sí? Y después little, non-specific, indefinite también, determiner plus, perfecto, y lo mismo acá. Ahí está. Bien, vamos al siguiente. Nouns. Today is one free lexical morpheme. Noun. Today one perfecto, bien. Common, uncountable. Can you say days? Para, ¿qué dice? Ah, no, está bien. Pensé que era day. No, no, today. ¿Está bien? Invariable singular, uncountable noun, individual inanimate. Déjame ver de nuevo el uso. Have you seen today's paper? Muy bien. Descriptive, muy bien. Pero ojo que si era descriptive no era determiner, era
Modifier.
modifier. Bien. Paper, one free lexical morpheme, bien. Common countable concrete, bien. Fíjense que acá paper está como countable noun. Variable regular, individual inanimate, and marked common case, bien. People, muy bien. Ojo que acá en General Classification dijimos que era
Uncountable.
uncountable. Uncountable. Concrete. Invariable plural, unmarked plural now, individual, individual,
No es collective.
tal cual. Animate, personal deal, marked, genitive, y a ver, para que quiero ver el uso.
I agree.
Possessive determiner, perfecto. Belongings, muy bien. One free lexical morpheme, common uncountable, concrete, invariable plural, individual inanimate, and marked common case. Perfecto. Y ahora los artículos. I would like to find a man, es el único who understands me. Indefinite article, general reference, any of the group. Bien. Determiner, common, countable, perfecto. Muy bien, chicos. Faltaría acá, que, además, los artículos, ¿no?
Sí, se ve que nos quedamos sin tiempo.
No importa, para la clase que viene. para el viernes que viene, porque me interesaba el tema de los pronouns. Bueno,
profe,
faltaría anything.
sí, también analizamos los de la otra, que eran para el
Dale, ahora lo
19,
vemos.
analizamos algunos.
Bueno, terminen para la clase para el viernes que viene. A ver, ¿cuáles analizaron? ¿Sí? Terminen ese file para la clase que viene, ¿sí?
Sería para el
Ahí lo
22,
compartí.
¿no?
¿Pueden ver?
Sí.
¿Sí? Bien. A ver. Another. Chicos, ¿saben qué? Cuando empiecen a poner las respuestas, no pongan la palabra sola, pónganla por lo menos en un contexto, así no tengo que ir subiendo y bajando cada vez, ¿sí? Para corregir. Ay, como está ahí, mira. En it is, en yes. Esto ya lo corregimos, ¿no? Sí.
Sí, están al final en amarillo. Va a ver que hay una
Sí,
línea separando y
perfecto. Acá está. Bien. ¿El he hicieron? ¿Puede ser?
los que están marcados con nombre están hechos
Bien,
abajo.
entonces, he blocks specific central personal pronoun, independent subject, personal male, third person singular, subjective case. Perfecto. A ver, soccer breeds a division that is apparent in almost every perfecto, non-specific, indefinite, positive, universal pronoun. Muy bien. Determiner, y ojo que cuando era determiner, ¿qué poníamos acá? Plus.
Right, I forgot.
A concrete countable, a common countable concrete noun. In this
Perfecto.
case, corner.
Ahí está. Each turn. Non-specific, indefinite, universal, positive, tal cual. Muy bien. Singular in number. There are no neutrals in Rosario. No, non-specific, indefinite, universal, negative pronoun, determiner, common, countable, concrete, neutral. Muy bien. Singular. Ajá. Bien. Y hasta ahí llegaron, ¿no?
Yes, I have a doubt as regards to another.
Sí.
That was the first pronoun. I put that it is a noun specific, indefinite quantifier pronoun. And then I put that the function is a determiner plus a common countable concrete noun therapy. With
Sí,
a
pero ojo
singular.
que, ¿se acuerdan que la another lo habíamos visto como un numeral? ¿Se
Por
acuerdan?
eso, ahí es la confusión que tenía.
Claro, no es a quantifier. It's a non-specific, but it's a numeral, it's general. ¿Se acuerdan que lo habíamos dividido?
Yeah.
Genial.
Sí, los
Sí.
numerals teníamos
Ya teníamos next, only,
tal cual.
todos esos.
I
Genial.
have a
Other
question
y
also
another.
about that. For example, the generical ones. Or what kind of features have?
No features,
No.
or maybe number.
Yeah, because I noted that all numerals didn't have, but I wasn't
No.
sure about them.
No, por
Them
eso,
either.
remember I told you last class that in some cases, the 4 features apply to all pronouns. Like, for example,
The
the
personal
specific
ones.
central pronouns.
Yeah.
But then there are other features, or there are other pronouns which may have 1 or 2, and others which may have no features at all.
Yeah, like them.
Claro. Ujú. Por
Great.
ejemplo, los compound pronouns, ¿se acuerdan? Those have only the gender, number and case, but not a person.
Yeah.
¿Sí? Bien, chicos, ¿alguna otra pregunta? Bueno, can you finish this for next Tuesday?
Tuesday?
¿Para cuándo?
Friday?
Okay, Friday.
Because on Thursday we have the test.
Okay, so we are going to check it next Friday.
Okay.
Bien, chicos. So, let's go to...
Perdón, esto que estuvimos corrigiendo, me tuve que ir a atender la puerta y me perdí un par de cosas. Esto que estuvimos corrigiendo ahora era la práctica que era hasta el martes, ¿no?
Ujú.
Ah,
Sí.
bueno, entonces lo corrige usted
Ah,
ahora, o sea, el martes, así
Bueno,
lo
pero
tenemos
chicos, a
antes
ver,
del
pónganse de
examen.
right.
acuerdo. ¿O es el
I
martes o
forgot.
el viernes?
No, no,
A
no,
ver.
el
Por
martes,
eso,
perdón.
Ujú.
Me equivoqué yo, porque me había olvidado que tenemos el test y necesitamos la resolución.
claro.
Pero a ver, o el martes o el viernes, yo no tengo problema, pero sí, para yo también organizarme porque también tengo otras cosas. Entonces,
Preferimos
el martes,
el martes, cosa de
Y
tener
así los
práctica
tenemos
corregida para el examen.
perfecto, bárbaro. Entonces, martes, el tiempo límite es 1 p.m.
Ya.
Obviamente, si lo tienen antes, vayan, a medida que lo van haciendo, lo van copiando. Ya a esta altura no importa si uno hizo uno, el otro 10 o ninguno, para ir agilizando la práctica.
Good.
Bien, chicos. Now, let's go to... Now we are going to see the semantics of the verb. Remember that yesterday and the week before, or yesterday, I think, we started with verbs. We saw the distinction between time, tense, and aspect. We dealt with primary verbs. We commented on auxiliaries, lexical verbs, and we focused on primary verbs, do, be, and have. Bien, remember I sent you the mind map. That's the mind map we are going to use to analyze verbs. Now we are going to deal with the semantic classification of the verb. Now we are dealing with semantics and semantics of the verb. Of course, it will depend. I mean, the tense the verb is used will also affect the semantics. Bien. Yesterday we started with stative verbs. We focused on quality and state. Remember, we saw the different classification, cognitive, verbs of perception, bodily sensations. Bien. What about, now we are going to see stance verbs. Notice that stance verbs are in between stative and dynamic, and there are only 4 stance verbs. They are live, stand, lie, and sit. Why are they called stance verbs?
Because they can be used in both forms, as stative verbs or as a dynamic one.
Bien.
Obviously, that changing, like there's like a transference from one to the other when you use them in one case or in the other.
Tal cual, exacto, muy bien. So when we use it in the progressive aspect, what happens? Does it have a temporary or permanent meaning?
Temporary.
Hmm?
Temporary.
Exacto, muy bien. The progressive expresses a temporary state. And the simple aspect, or Quirk calls it non-progressive, expresses a permanent state. So notice the difference between James lives in Copenhagen, which is a permanent residence, and James is living in Copenhagen. Maybe, yes, for working reasons, he has to be there for, I don't know, for a year, but then he will go back to his own hometown. Bien. The same happens when we use it tal cual. The words give you some help with the meaning. Sí, more than words, the tense.
No, I meant progressive, the word progressive.
Ajá, claro. Yes. The same happens with perfective aspect. See, the perfective progressive, as well as the simple, present perfect simple, can be used to refer to a state leading up to the present. So notice that if I say, I have sat here for over 2 hours, it's the same as I have been sitting here for over 2 hours. Bien. Questions, doubts as regards stance verbs? No? Now, let's move on now to dynamic verbs. These verbs are used to indicate an action. Run, open, sleep, eat. Those are dynamic verbs. And if you have a look at the mind map, see this one, you will see that dynamic verbs are divided into durative and punctual. At the same time, durative verbs can be conclusive or non-conclusive. Punctual can be conclusive or non-conclusive. And they can be agentive or non-agentive. Let's analyze each of them. What is durative? What is the difference between durative and punctual verb?
When they are durative, they are capable to have a duration throughout the time, whereas when they are punctual, is referring to an action or that happens just temporary and
Okay.
is not so much prolonged.
Tal cual, exacto. Sí, sí. O sea, it has to do with the length of the action. So if I say, I dropped the pen, the verb drop has little duration, o sea, it's punctual. If I say, I run 2 miles every day, run is durative. Eh? It has more duration. What else? Notice that punctual verbs are not usually used in the progressive aspect. And when they are used in the progressive aspect, they have a special interpretation. For example, can you provide an example?
I think that an example could be when it is broke by another single action. For
Ah,
example,
muy
if I
bien.
say I was opening the door when my sister arrived.
Sí, tal cual. Ahí puede
Open
ser.
is something which is punctual because I open or not. But in this case, I'm making that connotation of duration because of using it as a dynamic one, because I want to emphasize that while I was doing an action,
Ajá.
something else happened.
Interrupted it. Perfecto, muy bien. Ese es uno. And for example, think of the verb knock. This is a punctual verb. Why? Because that's it. Yes, you knock at the door and that's it. But what if I say he was knocking and knocking and knocking at the door?
I
¿Qué
want to
significa?
emphasize that something was really annoying for me.
Tal cual. Exacto. Yes, it was annoying. Yes, or the writer, the speaker felt annoyed by that action. Entonces, also change. A ver, Ludmila. Sí, became long. Claro. A ver, Ludmila. What do you mean by change? Tal cual. Sí, pero ojo, porque ahí ese get no es dynamic.
Ah, okay.
¿Sí? Cuando si yo digo, the weather is getting worse and worse, ¿qué pasa? Ahí get no es dynamic, es copular. Fíjate la
Sí, sí,
complementación.
sí.
¿Sí?
Analizando la oración me di cuenta.
Claro, tal cual es stative verb, denota un estado, ¿sí? Pero coincido con vos, bueno, ¿qué vimos ayer? Yesterday we saw that some stative verbs can be used in the progressive aspect, but with a difference in meaning. That would be one example of a copular verb used in the progressive aspect with a change of meaning to denote a change, a progress that leads to a change. Bien, entonces, dynamic verbs are usually used in the progressive, punctual are not usually used, but when they are, there is a change of meaning. What about this distinction between conclusive and non-conclusive? What does that mean? It has to do with, this question of a change of state. A conclusive verb brings about a change of state. Non-conclusive does not indicate a change of state. Think of the verb die. What do you think? Is it punctual? Pardon, we know it's dynamic. Dynamic. punctual or durative? She died.
Punctual, and it should be. Oh, what's the name?
Die, el verbo
Conclusive.
die.
Conclusive, right?
Tal cual, there is a change of state. See, tal cual, the weather has improved. What do you think, stative or dynamic? Ay,
Dynamic.
perdón, dynamic. Punctual or durative? The weather has improved.
I think it's
Durative.
punctual.
Durative, tal cual. Conclusive or non-conclusive?
Conclusive?
Tal cual, sí, a change
Okay.
of state. Ujú. Perfecto, muy bien. A ver, can you think of a non-conclusive verb? One in which there is no a ver, change of state. A ver, pensemos porque tiene que haber. Mm, Non-conclusive. A ver, sneeze podría ser. Bounce, to bounce the ball. No change of state. Sneeze. ¿Eh?
Right?
Sí. ¿Eh?
Right.
Right, también. ¿Sí? Entonces, conclusive o non-conclusive has to do with a change of states, whether there is one conclusive or not, non-conclusive. And what about agentive and non-agentive?
I think what I understood by this is that non-agentive basically means that there's no one that can interact with that verb, not a person.
No, I mean, no, it has to do with the doer of the action.
Yes,
If it's
like
Yeah, that's what I
agentive,
said. Well, it's not what
a
I
ver,
said,
dale,
but
a
that's
ver,
what I was
dale.
thinking. That the agentive needs a doer, like a person.
Exacto, an animate entity, ahí está mejor.
Okay, there we go.
An animate entity that could be a person. And non-agentive, the doer of the action is an
Non-personal.
no person.
claro,
Right.
exacto, non-person, inanimate, an inanimate force, for example. So if I say the wind was blowing hard, notice that blow is dynamic, punctual or durative?
Durative in this case.
Durative, conclusive or non-conclusive?
I think it's conclusive,
Sí, yes. Agentive or non-agentive?
non-agentive.
Non-agentive. Ujú, tal cual. ¿Eh? Bien, chicos. Anything else from here? Mm. Bien, now let's move on to each of the types. See, type D, K. See, from D is, claro, from D, E, F, G, I, J, K. See, los types. What about D, going ons?
Activities that are carried on without an animate form.
Tal cual, muy bien, perfecto, because they are non-agentive. For example, bueno, ahí tenemos the wind is blowing hard, it's raining. Is your watch working? Notice that the doer, the subject is non-agentive.
Yes, it is really used in metaphors.
Sorry?
It's really used in metaphors.
Sí. What do you mean by metaphor?
No metaphor, personification, sorry.
Ajá, en este caso,
Yes,
del de watch, porque nosotros no, ¿eh? Si
yes,
vos decís the wind is blowing hard.
yes. Or for example, when we say the trees are dancing through the wine, the
Tal
wind.
cual, ahí sí. Tal cual.
I have a
Bien,
question.
what about E, activities?
Okay. Activities are the ones that need an agent.
¿Cómo?
The activities are the ones that need an agent.
Tal cual, muy bien. But the agent is animate. Perfecto.
Yeah.
Agentive, let's say.
Mm.
And notice that the verb is typically what?
An intransitive one.
Intransitive verb. Tal cual. And look at the example. Jill was writing, working, singing. But they can also occur with a direct object. The children are playing chess. Norman is reading poetry. So notice that these activities, the verb can be monotransitive or intransitive.
Yes, and also can be used in passive voice.
Exacto, muy bien, Ludmila. And they can be used in passive voice. Tal cual. The approaches to the city were being watched. What about processes? They denote a change of state taking place over a period. And look at the
So,
example. The weather is getting warmer. Ah, mira, acá está tu ejemplo, Ludmila. See, so it's considered, it's taken as a dynamic verb, not stative one. See? Tal cual, it's a dynamic verb and it's a process. And notice that it's non-agentive. The doer of the action is an inanimate entity. The sun is ripening our tomatoes nicely.
yes, and we can say that they are a conclusive one.
Tal cual. Exacto, muy bien. And the progressive with this type indicates what? The incompleteness of the change. Como vos decías, the weather is getting warmer. It's a process that leads to that result, but it indicates incompleteness at the same time. Bien, what about G? Accomplishments.
We can say that in comparison with the previous one that was incompleteness, in this case we have like a clear goal or like an aim in order to arrive. For example, if I say the boys were swimming across the statuary.
Tal cual. Exacto. The boys were swimming across the statuary.
It means that they are doing something else in order to arrive there.
Right. It is an action that has a final thing or an end.
Exacto. See, which is different from the previous one, which is a process that may emphasize the incompleteness of the action. In G, type G, there is an accomplishment, o sea, a goal, an end point. Bien. What else? Notice that intransitive verbs that are used in E, activities, become accomplishments when a direct object or an adverbial of destination is added. Jill is knitting herself a sweater. Ahí tenés el accomplishment. Why? The action is in progress, but there is an endpoint. But if I say Jill is knitting, see, it's an activity. Fíjense en cómo cambia la semántica del verbo según también su estructura verbal. O sea, si yo ese verbo knit, if I use the verb knit intransitive, I was writing a book that was published yesterday. No, pero ojo ahí, ¿eh? No. Para porque hay un problema de tense. If it was published, then you cannot use the past continuous. I wrote a book.
We have to use the past participle in continuous. For example, if I say I had wrote a book that was published yesterday.
Podría ser I wrote a book.
Yes.
So a correct form would be.
Pero no el past continuous.
Okay, so a correct sentence would be I was writing a book that is going to be published tomorrow, for example.
Puede ser.
Or no?
A ver, dale, can you write it in the chat?
Yeah.
Maybe you can say, I don't know if it's the same,
A
but
ver.
you can say, I am writing a
Yo
book.
estaba pensando en lo mismo, porque si desde el momento que vas a usar, vi que it's going to be published, why past continuous? I am writing. Claro, ahí está mejor. Ahí está, I am writing a book that is going to be published tomorrow or next week. ¿Sí?
Okay.
Bien. ¿Qué pasa ahí con eso? I am writing, con ese verbo write. It's agentive. Perdón, conclusive or non-conclusive?
Non-conclusive.
Non-conclusive.
Non-conclusive. Punctual or durative?
Punctual? No,
Durative.
durative,
No.
sorry.
To write a book takes a lot of time, yes? So it's durative. So it is what?
It is an
Yo les
activity.
recomiendo, miren, ¿qué les recomiendo yo siempre a mis alumnos? Para buscar la semántica del verbo, ustedes van a usar esta tablita, ¿no? Arranquen, como les hice yo recién, de atrás para adelante. ¿Cómo empecé yo diciendo? ¿Agentive o non-agentive? ¿Conclusive o non-conclusive?
Right.
Punctual o durative, porque sabemos que es dynamic, ¿no? Entonces, cuando vos respondiste todo eso, bueno, fíjate cuál de todo esto es. ¿Es una activity? ¿Es un process? ¿Un accomplishment? ¿Sí? Entonces, acá dijimos que era agentive. Y a su vez, al empezar de atrás para adelante, vos ya vas descartando. Porque en el momento que vos decís que es agentive, en el caso este que escribió Pedro, ¿no? Vos ya descartás todos los non-agentive. Por lo tanto, vos vas a descartar los transitional events, momentary events, process, going on. Todos esos cuatro ya los descartás, ¿no? Te quedás con los agentive. Dijimos que era conclusive o non-conclusive.
Non-conclusive.
Non-conclusive. Entonces, todo lo que sea conclusive lo descartás. Conclusive agentive. Y después dijimos que era durative, ¿no?
Yes.
Sí, entonces, ¿cuál sería durative, non-conclusion, agentive? ¿Qué sería? Una activity.
It's an activity, yeah. But I wrote it this way because in my head, it changes from an activity to an accomplishment.
Sí, obvio, tal cual.
Yeah.
Sí, sí, porque an accomplishment, I mean, leads to a goal. An activity, it might lead to a goal, but it's an activity for the time being. Look at the examples. Jill was writing. In that case, writing is an activity. But if I say, ¿dónde estamos? The boys were swimming across the statuary. There is an endpoint. Or if I say that Jill is knitting herself a sweater, notice that there is an endpoint, see, an accomplishment. Y fíjense en que dice ahí que los intransitive verbs, which are in E, activities, become accomplishments when they are followed by a direct object or an adverbial of destination. Y ahí tenemos de nuevo los ejemplos. Bien, notice that the progressive indicates both process and accomplishment. See, accomplishment that the task was not necessarily completed. The boys were swimming across the statuary, but a giant wave made them turn back. So notice that in this case, the task is not necessarily over or completed. Bien. And what happens with these accomplishment verbs when the verb is followed by a to infinitive or ing clause? Finish.
It could be, I mean, you could see the difference between an action that is complete and an action that it's not complete.
Tal
If you
cual.
have a ing, maybe the task is not complete, or maybe.
Perdón, si yo digo they have finished widening the road, the task is complete. But if I say they have stopped widening the road, the task is not complete.
It's like you are making an interruption in the middle of your process.
Exacto, tal cual. Bien, chicos, questions, doubts?
Miss, so we can say that with these accomplishment verbs, sometimes there is a product involved for example, he was making a cake.
Ajá,
There's an accomplishment of making something sometimes.
ajá, tal cual.
Okay.
But what do you mean by product?
Like, for example, in the example of Jill is knitting herself a sweater.
Ah, ahí. Bueno, sí, en ese
I
caso
mean,
sí.
there
En
is
ese caso sí.
a concrete product that is made
Sí.
as an
Bueno,
accomplishment.
tal cual. En ese caso sí, pero ojo, because if you say the boys were swimming across the statuary, there is no product there.
Yes, I only wanted to make a distinction. Like,
Mhm.
it can be a concrete product or something that has a more abstract meaning. Something.
Ok. Bien. Punctual types. H and I. Momentary events and acts. What's the only difference between these two?
That one is non-agentive and the other is agentive.
Exacto, tal cual. Exacto, it has to do with the doer of the action. Yes. What else? Bueno, y acá estamos el ejemplo que vimos recién. When they are used with a progressive, we cannot make sense of them except by supposing that some repetition of the event took place. For example, John was nodding his face. O sea, the repetition of the action. Someone was firing at us. Fíjense en the verb fire. Ya está, es punctual. ¿Sí? Punctual, and it's agentive, but it's punctual. Yet, when we use it in the progressive aspect, it gives the impression of a repetition of the event.
One
Bien.
thing, one thing I noticed about these two is that they are modified by the pronoun used.
The pronoun?
Yeah, if it is personal or non-personal, because it becomes agentive or non-agentive. Because
Claro.
stopped could be the train stopped, which is non-agentive, but it could be I stopped, which is
Sí, tal
agentive.
cual, eso lo discutimos en una clase, ¿puede ser? ¿O
I
no?
don't remember. Last
Sí,
class I had to leave.
me parece que eso lo habré dado con otro curso. The difference in meaning, if I say, she stopped the car and the car stopped.
Yes, last class we talked about that.
Yeah, I had to leave.
Perfecto.
That's why.
Perfecto, sí. Ahí está, sí. Tiene que ver con the doer of the action. Sí.
Yeah, and sorry, but it's the very same thing that happens with verbs. For instance, we can say that one is intransitive, but then in another context, it could be monotransitive.
Sí, tal cual.
It
Ajá.
depends on the
Depending on how it's used. Ajá, tal cual. Bien, chicos, el último. J and K, transitional events and acts.
There's clearly a transition from stative to from little duration or more duration of the actions.
Tal cual, perfecto, muy bien. O sea, they have little or no duration. Is that what you mean? Muy bien. And they involve a change of state. Notice that transitional events are non-agentive. The train is arriving at platform 4. The queen was dying. See, so transitional events are non-agentive, while transitional acts are agentive. I'm stopping the car at this garage. It looks as if Juarez is scoring another goal. Bien. Notice that again, since the meaning of the predication effectively includes duration, the progressive requires a special interpretation. See, in this case, the interpretation is likely to be anticipatory. That is to say, that the progressive refers to a period leading up to the change of state.
Yes, it's like giving you something before to the certain action.
Tal cual, exacto. Muy bien. Y ahí tenés el ejemplo de Boeing 747 is taking off. Exacto. Refers to the accelerating of the plane preparatory to the actual takeoff. ¿Mm? Bien, chicos, questions or doubts? ¿No? Bien. I want you to read on your own 4.36. 4.36. Why? Because this is the progressive aspect in relation to tense. Para. No, oh, no, esperen, porque esto yo más vale había quedado en que yo le iba a dejar otro material. ¿Mm? Bien, chicos, esto no lean 436, yo de aspecto voy a buscar otro material y se los estaré mandando. ¿Mm? Bien, is this question of semantics clear? Bien, so what we have to deal with is tense and aspect. ¿Mm? Recuerden que el tense lo leemos de acá y el aspect lo voy a encontrar de otro lugar. Lo voy a sacar yo de otro lugar, porque acá está medio enroscado. Questions, doubts?
I have a doubt as regard to the next TP. It's going to be only to analyze pronouns.
Sí.
Okay.
Yes.
I have another question about the changing of writing between an activity to an accomplishment. If you change to be published tomorrow to be published someday, it's an activity that.
Sí, pero ¿sabes lo que pasa ahí? El tema es that is a relative clause that modifies the object. Acá tiene que ver con el verbo. Si yo te digo, what are you doing? I'm writing. Ahí es una actividad. Fíjate que el verbo está intransitive. Pero si yo digo, I wrote a book 2 years ago, ahí está como un accomplishment.
Okay. So
sí, ahí lo que te enroscó vos quizás es el uso de esa that clause, que es una relative clause. No tiene nada que ver. Porque en realidad la relative clause que hace modificarte o darte info acerca del antecedent.
Okay. So it doesn't modify the analysis of the actual verb.
No.
Okay,
no,
that's
no,
what I wanted to know. Okay, that's good. Okay.
O sea, si yo digo, I wrote a book last year, ahí ya es un accomplishment. Y si yo digo, what are you doing? I'm writing. That's an activity.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. O podría ser también, por ejemplo, si lleva un objeto, I am writing, no sé, a letter. Ahí puede ser como una activity, pero si yo digo, I wrote a book last year, ya ahí ya el evento ya es accomplished. So es un accomplishment.
Okay, got it.
Bien, chicos, ¿alguna otra pregunta? ¿No? Bien, el jueves no nos vemos, tenemos el TP. Bueno, yo probablemente en la semana les escribe para decirle cuánto dura, bla, bla, bla. Se los mando por mail. El viernes nos encontramos y ya ahí vamos a empezar a meternos en lo que es lo último de verbo, que sería tense y aspect. Y por favor, bueno, suban esa práctica si yo la puedo ver.
Okay.
Right, thanks.
Bien, chicos, any other question or doubt? ¿No? Bueno, see you next week and have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.
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 See you. Bye.